Este samba que me de maracatu é samba que preto feio, samba que preto. Que nada, um samba como esta haverá. Você não vai querer e você no final.
He's in the back room. He's watching us.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe he's waiting for something.
Daniel.
Oh, it's on. Yeah, it's on. We're ready. Okay.
All right. We are ready as soon as we're ready.
Yeah. We can open it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, well, thank you. Wasn't expecting that, but I love it. Buenas noches. My name is Alice Young Basora, and I am the executive director of the Dayton International Peace Museum. Thank you for being here today. It is beautiful to see so many new faces here in the museum. For those of you who haven't been here before, would you please raise your hand? I love having new people here. Thank you for coming. And for those of you who just raised your hand, you are sitting in the one and only Peace Museum in the United States, located here in Dayton, Ohio. I like to clap about that, but I also like to cry a little bit. Because being as a country as big as America, we only have one Peace Museum. And for me, that is a little bit sad, because you look at a country like Japan and they have over 200. And so for me, that says a lot, and it says what we value. And for me, I think that we need peace museums in every single state, and especially right now. We were talking before about the importance of community and the importance of connection and sitting down and taking time with each other and making those connections with new people and people that you don't know. And I often like to refer to the neon sign that we have in the back of the room above the TV back there that says, "There is no them, there is only us." That is not a quote that we came up with, but that's a quote from a U2 song, actually. And but it's powerful, because what it does is that it points out that there is no them, there is no other. We are all one, and none of us can be here if it weren't for the other people around us. We wouldn't have roads, we wouldn't have sidewalks, we wouldn't have buildings, we wouldn't have clothes, we wouldn't have floors. We wouldn't be here without each other. None of us would have the knowledge in our heads without each other. And we are here because of community. And what I'm seeing is that Yerba Mate is about community. And so it's so perfect that we're doing this here in the Peace Museum, because that's what we do. That's our goal of the Peace Museum, is to bring people together. So if you have never been here before, please come back and please bring somebody with you, because as I said, peace is more important now than ever before. And maybe that's just my opinion, but if you've been, thank you, but if you've been in the Peace Corps, you probably think somewhat of the same thing. And, you know, we are supported by 85% of our support comes from individual donations. And we use those donations to host programs like this one, to keep our lights on, to be able to run these programs and do this season for nonviolence that we're in right now. And we'll do 30-second season for nonviolence description. It's a 64-day period devoted to nonviolence, and bookended by the assassination anniversary of Gandhi, and 64 days later with the assassination anniversary of Dr. King. And those 64 days, this was created by Arun Gandhi, the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. And the idea was that taking the teachings of these two men to really hold up their teachings and not forget about them. That these two people changed nations without raising a fist. And the power of words this year is our theme for the season for nonviolence. And we deliberately took that, not just because of the teachings of those two men, but because of what the power of words did to a certain community in Springfield, Ohio, after words were spoken about the Haitian community and the ripple effect that that had on that community, and how words could have been used to empower and to enlighten and to love. And that's what I'm hoping that we can do here in this museum, is to educate, to share positive messages, to share strength and hope and resilience. And that's what we do here. We teach classes, we host, I break things. I do that a lot, actually, so it's pretty normal. Thank you. But join us, become a member, go to our website, and be part of the fabric that makes peace possible. We can't do it without you. Like, this is not a solitary mission. This is something that we can only do together. And doing something together, we collaborated with the Museum of the Peace Corps experience, which has been just an amazing experience to get to know so many people in this room. And Don, especially, like, we just met in person, but Zoom before that. And Mike, I don't know where Mike's back there. Yeah, so I've gotten to know Mike over, I guess, months sort of now. And it's been really special. So I am honored to be standing up here today, and in community with all of you, and in partnership with the Museum of the Peace Corps experience and this beautiful exhibit that we have up here. That quilt just blows my mind every single time I walk in here. I'm really excited to hear about Yerba Mate today and your book, and just the cultural connection, because I was not in the Peace Corps. It's like my great regret. Yeah, yet. I'm gonna do that 3-month thing eventually. But I'm gonna turn the mic over because I've just been yapping around, and before I break something else. So my friend Don Crosby, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. So first, I want to say this, as Alice mentioned, the season of nonviolence and celebrating it and kind of bringing it back to front of mind for people the planning for this started in 2024, right? And as Alice mentioned, a 64-day celebration. It started on January 30th. But this has been a collaboration for the Museum of the Peace Corps experience. I'm a board member for the Museum of the Peace Corps experience, and we don't have a physical museum. It's one of our goals and our dreams. Right now, we're basically traveling exhibits. We have virtual events, but the idea is to tell the Peace Corps story, both from volunteers' perspectives, currently serving volunteers, return Peace Corps volunteers, but also from host country national perspectives. The idea is that it is an experience, and that story needs to be told, especially, as Alice said, in today's time. So this has been a collaboration. The International Peace Museum had this vision of celebrating the season of nonviolence, and we had a desire to do something as well as the Museum of the Peace Corps experience, but we don't have a physical location. So this was talking about community, was saying, let's work together, right? And so it's been really, really beautiful. I want to also thank, first of all, Heidi Acuna, who has been our feet on the ground. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Are you right in front of me? Heidi Acuna has just put in so much effort to pull this event together, and she really has been the person on the ground making it happen. So Heidi, thank you for everything you've done. And this is, for a lot of us that travel, this is actually our first time in Ohio, and it's been so awesome. And just thank you for welcoming us, and I appreciate it. So thank you all for coming. We do have several return volunteers from Paraguay, and we have at least 2 Paraguayans. So I also wanted to welcome all of the return Peace Corps volunteers from Paraguay, as well as the Paraguayans, Enrique and Victor. And my glasses, I don't know where, but anyways, thank you. Okay. And then the other volunteers from other countries, thank you for your service and for being part of this event. So without further ado, I have the great honor of introducing, first and foremost, my dear friend, Julia. But Julia and I served together in Peace Corps. We were part of Group A29. We also have our amazing other A29 ladies. So Sue, Danielle, Dina, Heather, Julia, and myself, and Heidi all served in the Peace Corps in Paraguay together in the same group. So Julia's our dear friend, and she's a professor at Arizona State University. After our service, she went to get her PhD at Harvard, and as part of her dissertation, she started doing research on the Guarani mission. So her first book is called The Guarani and Their Missions, and as she was doing the research for that book, she learned about we already knew culturally the importance of yerba mate during our Peace Corps service, but then Julia really started to dig deeper and say, yerba mate had really important, not just cultural significance, but also socioeconomic significance. And so then that kind of piqued her interest to do more. And she's now recently published her second book, which is on yerba mate, which she'll be presenting today. And then Julia will do a book talk, and then we're going to have an open question and answer period with Julia. And then I have one announcement. Then Mike has another announcement. And then we're going to do a sing-along with Enrique of Paraguayan Songs. Enrique's going to play a few songs, and then we're going to do a sing-along. And there is, as Julia mentioned, there's chifa and sopa paraguaya, so please help yourself. And I guess the final word, and Julia, you're going to talk about this in your talk, it's just that, as Alice mentioned, for us, for U.S. Americans who served in Paraguay, I drink mate every day. It's part of who I am now. And but really in Paraguay, you stop and you drink in a circle together and you connect. And sometimes, like in my site, it's under a mango tree, and you pull up chairs and you sit on the mango tree, and it is a way of connecting together. And Alice and I, we were talking before, the outgoing Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, I don't know if you read his piece. He was the Surgeon General under Biden, and as he was leaving in his final week in office, he published his parting prescription for America. And he talked about the lack of community and of human connection. And this is really, like, for us, this is one of the ways to bring community back together, where we sit and we stop and we just be together. So I'm so excited to hear your talk. I have the book, and I'm just excited to see what you want to present to this group today, Julia. So thank you. And I have it. You have that, yeah. I'm going to turn this off.
There we go. Okay. This is so exciting to be here, to see so many, most of the seats are filled. Some people I know, but other people I don't know. And then we've spent some time introducing mate and tereré to people and sharing that. And it just warms my heart. And it's really exciting to be sharing and talking about tereré and mate, especially because yerba mate is a healthy energy drink, which we see the cans in the back, is becoming really popular, especially among college students. It's really, really popular in California. And a canned energy drink that's a single-use individual drink is very different than mate and tereré. So being able to share that with you is really exciting. So I have some presentation here, and you can see this is my book, and I'm a professor at Arizona State in Phoenix, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer in 1998 to 2000. And here you see an image. This was a picture that I took going back in 2015, but it really shows the sense of community and sharing. And all of us who have spent time in Paraguay, this looks super familiar. Sitting in the countryside, in the backyard, and you have the round of tereré, and you just sit and talk and drink. And it's a wonderful experience. So yerba mate, what is it? It's a caffeinated drink, so don't drink too much. I see some people have both the gourd and the energy drink. Be careful, don't drink too much. Take the energy drink home. And there's plenty more there. So it's caffeinated like tea or like coffee, but it's also what makes it so different is it's a social activity. And it's you may go and have a coffee with somebody, but sharing mate, you go and have a coffee with somebody, a coffee, you go and you drink, tomar unos mates, some mates. It's not one. You sit and you share for a long period of time. So it's a very different experience. And this was taken when I was in the Peace Corps. I'm in somebody's kitchen. It's a cold evening. We're sitting around the fire. This was 98 to 2000. They were a wealthy family that had a thermos. So oftentimes you would sit around the fire and there would be a kettle, the pava, and you would serve mate from that and just have a conversation. So yerba mate, its scientific name is Ilex paraguayensis. And on the left is an 18th century image that a Jesuit Paraguayan, a Jesuit missionary made of the tree. It's Ilex paraguayensis is from the holly family, and you can see some of the trees growing in a plantation in Argentina. Tea is a shrub. Yerba mate is a tree. Again, it's Ilex holly. There are hundreds of different ilexes. There are 3 that are known to be drunk. So there's Ilex paraguayensis, there's Ilex guayusa, which is in Ecuador, and then in the southeast United States is Ilex vomitorio, kind of a bad name. The story is that by the time they started giving scientific names, Europeans were doing that. Tea was already pretty prevalent in Britain. British tea merchants didn't want any competition, so they gave it a scientific name, Ilex vomitorio. You drink too much, you vomit. But it's widely seen in the southeastern United States, Georgia, North Carolina, as a shrub in people's yards. Very common, and the native peoples drank it, and you can still buy it today. I, in fact, can find it at my Sprouts supermarket in Phoenix. It's called yapon, and it's very similar to yerba mate, and they're trying to kind of compete with that. These are some images from Paraguay. This is when I went back in 2015. And Don Vicente, in my site, he was proudly showing off a yerba mate tree in his chacra, in his farm. And for those of you from Paraguay, I love this picture. The countryside is beautiful and lush, and the tierra colorado, the red dirt is just beautiful, and I have very fond memories. So he showed me, this is from Don Vicente's chacra, and you can see these 2 branches, the leaves are slightly different, and I'm not quite sure what's going on here, if that's a different variety. So the Guarani, back in the day and up till the 20th century, there were different ilexes in Paraguay and that whole region that were consumed as yerba mate. So it was not exclusively Ilex paraguayensis. There was Ilex dumos and other ilexes. But when Argentina started cultivating in plantations, they only cultivated the little plantitas that they planted were only Ilex paraguayensis. And then it became yerba mate, to this day, is only Ilex paraguayensis. But you can drink some of the other ilexes. So I'm not sure if that's a different ilex or maybe, I don't really know what's going on there. And here, he's like most of the farmers in Paraguay, does a little bit of everything. Of course, has the mandioca or the yuca, has poroto, beans and maíz, corn, grows some peanuts. And some of this he sells, some of it the family uses. So those are little plantitas, little plants that he's growing and then going to put in his chacra, in his farm. Probably not enough to really sell, but just for the family to have their own yerba, which is really neat. So this was what during my Peace Corps time, and this is a traditional barbacoa. Has anybody seen these? Anybody who was a Peace Corps volunteer? Wow. Okay. For the most part, like these are dying out. This is from indigenous times. It's made out of entirely forest products. You use vines to tie it. And this is a way of toasting the yerba. So this is Don Melchor. He would grow his own yerba and then harvest it. So you can see here, you would take a branch, cut down a branch, and you, unlike tea, with tea you harvest the fresh leaves. So the leaves that are not fresh, but the leaves in the summer, the new shoots, the very tender green shoots. That's what you use for tea. For yerba, you want the mature leaf. So you harvest in the winter, not in the summer, in the winter, the fall. So you cut a branch, and then we don't see it here, but you toast it over the fire. Think of like s'mores and your marshmallows. So you toast it over the fire to have it pop, so that the water that's in the leaf evaporates. So you don't want to have all that water in the leaf for oxidation. And unlike black tea, like your yerba is green if you saw it there. You don't want it to oxidize. So you toast the yerba leaves, and then you do what he's doing with a machete, and you chop it into smaller branches, and then you put it on the barbacoa. And you leave it there for 24 hours. And this is the bottom one is you're looking up into the barbacoa. So you have a tunnel and a fire, and it toasts the leaves for 24 hours. And then you're moving the leaves, turning them on the barbacoa. And then you have to chop them even finer to have it like what we were drinking. So that's kind of the traditional way. In Argentina, it's usually, you don't have as many jujos or herbs in there's variety, but a lot of times you have it just plain yerba. So the yerba that we were drinking had some jujos in it, but they were dried jujos or herbs. Most of those, I think, there was a variety, but had a lot of mint and boldo. So in Paraguay, you'll have jujeras, and these are typically women. And so in the middle one, you see her jujera, her table, and she has all these different jujos or herbs. And you drive up. So we were on the road, and we had hired a driver to take us from point A to point B. So he has his thermos, he has his mate and his bombilla. So he drives up to the jujera, and he said, I don't remember what exactly he said, but he could say, I want something that's refreshing, or I want something for my liver, or I've been having a headache, or whatever. I want to lose weight. You could do anything, and they'll give you a mix of jujos. And she then has this big mortar and pestle, and she pounds it to release the juice. She has this bucket full of water because there's not a sink in the middle on the side of the road. So she has a bucket of water, and she has frozen plastic bags of ice. So you pay for the jujos, the water, and the ice, and then you're on your way, and you're driving, and hopefully you have somebody to serve you. There is in Brazil, they have an automatic server thing I've seen where like truck drivers, you can just put your gourd there, and then it refills it. So in the United States, like what we see here, it's a healthy energy drink. And I can tell a story about that. I've written an article. It's free if you have any interest in how Guayaquil, this company, transformed yerba mate for American consumers. I have a mixed view. Like, I published this. It's a bit critical of the company because it's not the shared aspect, even though they try to promote that. They promote it as healthy, but if you look at the amount of sugar, it's huge. They intensify the amount of caffeine. So if you were to take this loose leaf and brew it as a tea, it's like green tea or even black tea. Somewhere around there is the amount of caffeine. Those cans are not the same as a tea. They use a yerba mate extract to make it more caffeinated. because they want to compete with Monster and all these other energy drinks. They put in more caffeine. So, but that's what American consumers want. So that's what we have. But they still will send free product because they love having yerba mate promoted like this. And here you can see these are all newspapers from different University of California student newspapers. And you can see they have we don't read the articles, but you can see how prevalent Guayaki is. And in fact, they have a trademark on that yellow. So there have been other yerba mate energy drinks that try to use that yellow, and they sue them, and the cans change. So be careful with that yellow. So this idea of peace and nonviolence and building connection, yerba mate, when Dawn said this idea, she didn't have to say anything more. Like I'm all on board. So Ubuntu, which is I am because we are, is the translation. Interconnectedness, shared humanity, and community. That's what mate tereré is. Not the healthy energy drink. So this, in Peace Corps, I'm going to build on some of these themes. So in the Peace Corps, we saw how it facilitates communication and fosters communication. So I lived in a town called Curaguatu, and I did my work about 10 to 12 kilometers outside in a very rural community. So I would go there once or twice a week on my bicycle or take a bus and walk in. And I would go and talk to the people. So I got to know them, and I'd go from house to house. And then we would have a community meeting at the end in the evening, and we did a project. And you have to make a project and do something like this. You got to get to know the people. You got to talk with them. You also got to figure out what do they want. You got to. They're like this young lady, like she's from America. Why is she here? What is she doing? And they have a long history of a dictatorship under Stroessner. So then there's also this idea. There's a lot of corruption. It was in fact the second most corrupt country in the world when we were there. So they're also like, she's here to steal from us. So I had to build connection. And so I'd go from household to household. And it was so cool, though. It was cool to be there, to be in these conversations, and it's beautiful. And I'm thinking about my friends back in the U.S. in the office and grad school, and, this is so cool. And I get to go out and see their fields, and I get to see the peanuts grow in the ground. And I get to go and, just have all these experiences. So I would spend the night there and I, see the stars. It was gorgeous. And I couldn't, every night I was like, this is so cool. This is so cool. This is so awesome. And we're going to do this project, and I'm going to do this, and this is so great. And then I'd finally fall asleep, and I was like, this is so awesome. I love this so much. I can't sleep because I'm so excited. Goes on for like 6 weeks. I'm like, something's wrong. I can't go to sleep until 2. Then I realized it's the caffeine that I have at each family's house. So I had to but it's hot and you want to meet people and converse. So I learned how to regulate the caffeine because you just shouldn't have that much. But it was a way, if I weren't there, sometimes I've talked to some LDS Mormon missionaries who sometimes they're not allowed to have caffeine and not allowed to have mate. I'm like, you can't, how are you going to connect with people in Paraguay or Argentina in these different regions if you're not drinking mate? Like, it's so important, or tereré. And for those of you who don't know, tereré is with cold water. That's most popular in Paraguay, especially during the day when it's hot. When it's cold, then you have mate. In Argentina, it's in Uruguay, southern Brazil, it's mate for the most part. And sometimes in northern Argentina, they'll have, young people will have tereré, but they put in like tang, like the flavored sweet fruit juice stuff. It's not so good. But in Argentina, oftentimes there's kind of like tereré. No, that's not, they don't drink it as much. So mate prevents divorce. That's not my association, but this is a picture of me in a friend's kitchen in the rural countryside. And when I went back and I said I was researching yerba mate, the fathers of the families that I worked with, they were talking and they said they were in their 50s and 60s, and they said, you know, we don't have divorces. We didn't have divorces in our families. Like we are still together. But our children, there's a lot more divorces or separations. They're like, this is because of mate. And their story was, they're farmers. They get up early in the morning. They go to the kitchen. The wife sets the fire. They sit there and they drink mate and they pass it around. And when you pass it around, you start talking. And that they brought up issues and conversations of things that they didn't have the time or to otherwise bring up, and they worked through those issues. Whereas their kids, they've scrimped and saved so their kids could become school teachers or maybe work in an office. And they get up in the morning, they drink coffee, and they go. And they don't have those times for those conversations to bring up these small little things that eventually become big things and lead to they said, divorces and separations. So even at that level. And this is when I did my research, I was in Argentina. You can see a more affluent setting. But one of the stories that was really important to me was I have a friend who's in the judiciary justice system. And she told me how they had to do a workshop. She was in charge with some other people of setting up a workshop about discrimination. And I think it was about like gender discrimination or in the household and stuff. Very touchy subject. And that how do you get people to open up about it? You know, like they're not going to really talk about it in the workplace. So what they did purposefully when they had workshop in small groups, they gave them mate. So that mate fosters communication and it fosters connection. And so hopefully people would be more honest and be able to have this be a productive experience. This one I love too this is a little bit post-COVID. And this is so there's many Facebook groups about mate and yerba mate. And so this one is an LDS missionary who was in like Louisiana, and he set up a virtual mate chat. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this out. So I joined. It was only 3 of us, but he was an American who was doing service in Louisiana, and he liked mate. And there was a guy from like somewhere in Europe, like Poland or something, and he had somehow picked up mate. And then me in Arizona, and we were drinking mate. But also the idea of an LDS missionary trying to build connection and trying to potentially do his missionary activity, and again through mate. And we had a good time. I don't think anybody converted. So why Argentina? I feel a little guilty. I love Paraguay. Paraguay is my first love in South America. And my book is The Drink That Shaped a Nation. I did give a book talk in Paraguay. Luckily, they couldn't. You weren't able to get the book really from Amazon. It was too complicated. I didn't say the nation was Argentina. So, why did I study Argentina? Because Paraguay is fascinating. Yerba mate is central to the culture. But I chose Argentina. So this is a 2017 article in the New York Times. Basically what happens is yerba mate has a very different trajectory in Argentina than it does in Paraguay, Uruguay, and southern Brazil. In those places, from everything that I've experienced, is mate, tereré have always been there. People are always proud of it. It's always part of the country, the identity. Not true in Argentina. So in 2017, there's this, look for the Cheta de Nordelta and watch the YouTube audio, listen to YouTube audio. It is fascinating. So this hit the New York Times, but it went viral in in Argentina. It was a woman who said, I'm just a normal woman. I'm a surgeon. And I live in like the fancy neighborhood, but I'm a normal woman. And she left a voicemail message audio on WhatsApp for like 5 minutes, ranting and raving because she had a house in Nordelta, a vacation home. It's a weekend home, just like an hour outside of Buenos Aires. And she complained about her neighbors. So she spent, I don't know how many, I forget what it was, $100,000 on this condo. And she wanted to go there and relax. And her neighbors were beasts with no education. And they drank mate, as an example, they drank mate like they would at Bristol Beach in Mar del Plata, the lower class beach. And how dare you drink mate in the public space at the pool? This is so lower class and horrible. And she goes on and on and on. And it centers a lot around mate. And this went viral. Like, it was on all the news everywhere. And it came back in like 2023 with TikTok videos. But she was just ranting and raving. And everybody's like, she is horrible. But there is this underlying, and in much of the 20th century, classist sentiment about mate. And, you know, people will say she is an anomaly. And yet, in November of last year, there was a woman at the beach outside of in Argentina, who she went to. The two women were having mate at this private golf course. You know, it's a beautiful place to have mate, right? Like outside. And one of the club members hit her over the head and beat her with the golf club until it broke, and said, this isn't Ostende, a cheap beach town. Go to the slums, the Cono Urbano, to drink mate, you black rats. We paid $50,000 to be in this, members of this golf course. So this still exists. It's down low. There is classism. There is this some anti-mate, but this is so striking because I'll get to it. But now today, it's the national infusion. Everybody drinks mate. Like, not everybody, but to be Argentine is to drink mate. It is central to the identity, and yet there is this that exists. And for much of in the 19th century and early 20th century, there was a lot of negative associations with mate. It was associated with laziness, and it was anti-hygienic because you share this bombilla. This guy, Carlos Girola, he was, this is 1920s, is when they're really planting plantations of yerba in Argentina. Up to this point, you harvested most of it in the wild in Paraguayan and Brazil. So they're cultivating yerba mate. He's an agronomist. He's writing all this stuff about plantations and total proponent of yerba mate. But he's saying that drinking it with the bombilla is anti-hygienic. It's a loss of time. It's backward. We have to drink it as a tea. This is the socialist deputy in Buenos Aires in congressional debates. You know, socialist, you're the man of the workers. This is the Workers' Party. And he's saying it's the foodstuff of the poorly fed, of the chronically hungry. It's the drink of the people who have nothing to do and disdain the value of work because you're sitting around drinking mate. And he says it's going to disappear. As South America gets wealthier, nobody's going to be drinking it. And in fact, I didn't put the quote in there, but the biggest yerba mate company, Las Marias, in Argentina and arguably in the world, there was an interview around the 60s, and he's like, mate, it's going to disappear. It's only going to be like husbands and wives in the bedroom or in the morning at the kitchen. It's just going to disappear. It's anti-hygienic and it's not continuing. Mafalda. So, and to really see, and there is data that the per capita consumption of yerba mate declines, but we see in documents, it disappears in the public sphere. People are drinking mate, don't get me wrong. But the middle class and upper middle class, especially in Buenos Aires and in the cities, are not drinking it. So Mafalda is a famous cartoon for anyone who studies or is familiar with Latin America. She's the epitome of middle class in the mid 20th century, and there are just big thick books about her. So she's so Argentine. Not a single cartoon of her drinking mate or anything of mate. This is the only reference to mate. And where she asked her friend, and this actually wasn't published because of the critique of the president, but she asked her friend, does anybody drink mate in your family? And he says no. He says sometimes, and she asks why, and she says, oh, just curious. And then she's beaten up, so didn't really like that question. And then she says, hey, I was just trying to help you out. Like, nobody drinks mate these days. Like, it doesn't give any prestige. It's really negative. Could you imagine a business person drinking mate at his desk? No way. And then he says, well, the president does. This is a political statement. It was a dictatorship. The artist was very much against the president. And she's like, yeah, well, case in point that he drinks it, that he's not a good president. So this is the only reference to yerba mate in there. This guy, Jorge Luis Borges, Nobel Prize-winning author, most famous author of Argentina. If you ever study any Spanish literature, Jorge Luis Borges is it. And he writes a lot of Argentine, about Argentina, being Argentine, in his books and his writing. So he has a great quote here. Again, you can see how like people aren't drinking mate in the middle class elite, especially in Buenos Aires. And so the interviewer asks if he drinks mate, and he's like, well, I used to, but when it was my grandfather who died, we gave it up, and it's kind of nasty. It has these things floating in it, and it's kind of a waste of time, like playing cards. This is not the way it would. You say this now in Argentina, and you get hell to pay. So it is the national infusion of Argentina. Wine is the national drink. It is they also, I can't quite get this, and Paraguay has they have Tereré, I believe, as a cultural patrimony declared by the UN, but Argentina has, just like you think of champagne is with France, and it has the geographic indication. Tequila is with Mexico. Argentina got yerba mate Argentina. I don't quite get that because it's grown in Paraguay, it's grown in Brazil, and there's a state of Brazil that also has a geographic indicator, but it shows the nationalism. But it's and I'm not going to read this, but this went viral. Anytime I talk to Argentines about studying yerba mate, they refer to the poem that Lalo Mir made popular, and it talks about how everybody in Argentina drinks mate, the rich, the poor, every political stripe. And there's a lot of political tensions right now in Argentina, and a friend of mine sent me the La Unión is a brand of yerba mate, and they advertise like everybody, no matter what political stripe you are, you drink mate, and that's the one thing that Argentines can share is mate. So it's a very interesting thing where it's part of national identity, and yet for much of the 20th century, it was looked down upon. And you still have this cheta de Nordelta and the golf woman like hitting somebody. Like, what's with this classism? What happened? So it's now a national symbol. So here you can see, and that's the subject. That's why I chose Argentina, is because this unique trajectory. And here you can see this is a high school in Buenos Aires, and it's everywhere. The yerba mate. So I have basically kind of 3 points. This is the main reason, is the repeated economic crises. So Argentina in the early 20th century, so early years of the 20th century, Argentina was the 5th, 6th wealthiest country in the world. They had more money per capita than Japan, France, and I believe Germany. they were really wealthy. And if you go to Buenos Aires, you see these, they're now decrepit, but beautiful palaces, and the wealth that was there was incredible. And they continue to be, and it's still a very educated population in general. And you go to any bookstore and it's packed. People read. And they industrialized. They had a lot of industry and a strong middle class. And for much of the 20th century, people would say, Buenos Aires is the Paris of South America. And a lot of people from, especially Buenos Aires, they associated more with Europe than with South America. But these repeated economic crises, they're not like Europe. Their economy is in shambles. And it really came to a head in the 1980s with hyperinflation, and then into the 1990s with neoliberal reforms and privatization and deindustrialization. So in the 1980s, you have hyperinflation prices. You couldn't even see, I wasn't there, but you couldn't, the prices at restaurants, they didn't even put the prices because they're changing daily. The inflation was unimaginable. Anytime you got money, you spent it immediately. But with inflation, what does that mean? That means you have less spending. So those people who still have jobs, their money is disappearing and they have less money. What do you do when you have less money? You find ways to save. So there's all these newspaper articles about how do you survive in Argentina? The basket of basic necessities, and we can't see it, but yerba mate is always on there as a basic necessity. And so what do you do if you drink coffee and tea? It's expensive. You start drinking yerba mate, just like you, instead of taking a taxi, you take a bus. You find ways to economize. So people are pushed towards drinking yerba mate, because yerba mate, there's always been a pressure, since it's been the drink of the poor, to keep the prices down with price controls and other things. So people start drinking mate because of it's less expensive. And here you see, this is a great cartoon. And all the sociologists are talking in the 80s and the 90s, all the literature is about the disappearance of the middle class, the new poor, the people who were middle class who are now poor. And so you see these guys here, and one guy is drinking mate, and they're in with the fire and camping and poor. And he says, I don't know what's going to happen to us, the middle class. So you can see the disappearance of the middle class and the association with mate. And there are tons of cartoons during this era about the prices, about cost of living, about the financial problems, and mate is central. So people first start drinking it, I argue, because of they're saving money. And along with that, well, I'll get to that in a moment. It's also, for those of you who have been in South America, one of the big things in Argentina, also in Paraguay, but I especially felt it in Argentina, is having meals. And that meals are, even if you go to a restaurant, they are a long process. So when you go, even if you go to a restaurant on it for brunch, it's like a 3-hour thing. And Americans will be like, why isn't the waiter coming and taking away our stuff or bringing us stuff? Well, the waiter knows that you're going to be there for hours. Or you go to somebody's house and you have an asado, you have a grilled meat, and you have a meal, but there's a long time of visiting. And so this idea of sharing food and of having, spending time together, again, economic crises, you have less money, beef is expensive. So how can you share and have food? You can share unos mates, and it's less expensive than having the big meal. So that was also, people enjoyed that. Also, the idea of autóctonos. I didn't know this word. It's a big word, but I learned this in my research. It's something native. It's something yours. So again, there had been this long time of Argentina trying to be like Europe, and there, these palaces and being European. But as you have these repeated economic crises and realizing we aren't European, we're not keeping up with America. And it's all very discouraging to have something that's yours, something to be proud of, that this is ours. And it doesn't, unfortunately in Argentina, they don't tie it back much to the Guarani and the indigenous populations. Rather, they tie it back to the gaucho. And the gaucho is really an important founding figure, the cowboy. And so you can see they're having an asado, but drinking mate while they're waiting for the meat to be ready. So that idea of something that's truly theirs. And again, this social aspect, it was, people enjoyed it. Going through these economic crises, it's hard. And a lot of the mate, you also drink outside at the park. So getting fresh air, there's a lot of stress. Mate was really refreshing. So the resurgence, you can really see, this is Carlos Menem, and this was very different because any of you who know about Argentina, Perón is the working class president. He's the one, he gave vacations, he raised wages. He really did a lot for the workers, and he's considered the president of the worker. Peronism, the Peronist party is still very much alive. But Perón, you never see him drinking mate. There is no image of him drinking mate. He wanted workers to maintain their workers' identity, but be middle class. And middle class was drinking tea, drinking coffee, not mate. Menem is elected in 1989. You can see he is not a common person. He has equestrian gear. He's super wealthy. He hobnobs with rich models, has a Ferrari, but he drinks mate. And this is what somebody said in an interview in Argentine when they voted for him, that the person in the street who understands his fellows is the guy who drinks mate. And there are lots of images of Menem drinking mate. Huge change in the country. This is like, it's everywhere. I love this picture. This is from the National Archive. And when you go, this is the National Library, actually. And so students go and they study and they bring their mate. And you go, this is a sign above the toilets in the bathroom, and it says, don't throw your papers or your yerba mate, the toilet paper, or the yerba mate in the toilet because it clogs the toilet. And those of you who are taking home a gourd, you'll see it's like a hassle to empty the yerba mate and rinse it out, but don't throw it in the toilet. Here our flushing system is better, but you can see where it's everywhere. And those of you who follow soccer, like Messi. So Messi, when they won the World Cup, one of his first posts was him in bed in the morning, waking up with a trophy and his mate. He very much has the mate to show. Also, it's one of the things is that he left when he was really young to go to Spain. And a lot of Argentines are like, well, he's not quite Argentine. He spent so much time in Spain. He doesn't play like Argentines play. And he's not Maradona. And it's a way that he is Argentine, and that he's really shown that he's Argentine. This is just how crazy things are. So he posted what about making a yerba mate flavored Lay's potato chip. And then there's all sorts of, you can find on YouTube people trying to put their dried yerba mate on potato chips. So it's kind of like everywhere. And I thought it would be good maybe we could use the microphone and have maybe if people who have the Paraguayans and Argentines and people who have been in Paraguay, we could talk a little bit answering questions because, yeah, I've researched this, but there are people who have had other experiences, and we could kind of maybe either riff off of each other or also answer questions. But maybe if we could start first with Enrique, and I forget your name, Victor, and then you ladies are Argentine. If you could say a little bit about your experience with yerba mate.
Raise your hand who's willing to start.
Yeah.
Because and she's right 100%. Very, very popular place in Asunción. We have the Mercado 4. And no,
You're fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Everyone can hear Enrique?
It's better if you cannot see very well because I
Do you ladies want to say something? What is your first experience with mate?
My parents were immigrants to Argentina, so they were immigrants from Croatia, at that time Yugoslavia. So I didn't start acquainted with mate until I was an adolescent, and I would go to my friend's house, and there we started drinking mate, and that became a lifetime. When we get here in 1981, the first thing, where do we get yerba mate? Because there was no Amazon at that time, so you needed to. And we ended up finding it in a Korean store. I don't know how was that, but that is the kind of experience that you have with that drink. And it's still today, it's my first thing in the morning. Heat the water, sit down, put on the computer to read the news, and relax for a minute if you can after reading the news. But yeah, that was my experience. And one thing I wanted to mention is that you start drinking yerba mate, even if it's a caffeinated drink, early in your life. So what parents will do, and I remember that, is that they will drink their mate, and then they will put the yerba mate that is left with milk. And that's what the kids will drink then, and that's mate cocido. Yeah. And like she was saying also, sometimes when the money wasn't good, you will let it dry and then drink it again. Yeah. Or if you didn't find it anywhere, that's what we will do. Want to add something?
Yeah, one of my grandparents, he was from Spain. So the same with her story. The immigrants didn't drink it. So some of the prejudice comes from that place. Yeah. From the Europeans. Like my grandfather, he was not prejudiced, but he didn't see the drink as natural. So he had to learn. And so I am a second generation, and I had to learn to like it. But they say that you need to love something to know what it is. So it's through love too that comes to us. It's love.
Yeah. And definitively, I remember getting together with friends. That's the first thing that somebody will do. Go and put la pava con, they put the hot water, so we start drinking mate and start chatting. But that was the center of it wasn't Coke or coffee or anything. It wasn't mate that will bring us together.
What you said about the poverty and like when you don't have enough money, and also that there's also lots of anecdotes about reusing the yerba. But it has been repeatedly, even especially in the 1980s, I've seen newspaper articles, and today in the past 2 years, where there's newspaper articles about yerba mate consumption going up because people can't afford anything else. And so they're having mate or cocido with galletitas, little crackers, because they can't afford meals. And it's scary right now in Argentina with that.
Yeah. In wealthy countries, it's promoted as if you want to lose weight, you drink mate. For other people, it's not like that, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So when you're in a group, there's what, like 4 or 5 people drinking. So is it one?
So when you're drinking, you're in a group of like maybe 4 or 5 people, and you have one cup, and that one cup is being passed. So not everybody has their own cup.
So I have seen that's traditionally what happens. There has been a change in, and I can't speak as an expert because I've gone back after COVID, but I haven't lived in Argentina or Paraguay since COVID. But I have a group of friends who in Buenos Aires, and actually that image of sharing mate in the city in Buenos Aires of me drinking was with this group of mothers. And before COVID, we would get together, and there was one woman who did not like mate. And so she would drink tea. So there would be tea for her, and everybody else would drink mate. Interesting thing was when she went to be an elections observer in another, like a poor neighborhood, she drank mate. Because when they're passing it around, she wanted to be part of it, and she didn't want to be like the rich. Yeah. So, but she would never drink mate with us, and we would share. So after COVID, I went back. This was a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, and we got together, and say there were 10 of us. 2 people brought their own gourd and bombillas, so we would share the thermos with them. But the other 8 of us, we drank it. And they talked to me about, like, COVID was really bad in Buenos Aires. The lockdowns were horrible. And like you couldn't take your kids to the park. You couldn't go outside. You could walk your dog. And living in a high rise, it was really, really hard. And if you'd have certain times you could go to the supermarket, but if you got caught talking to somebody, arranging to meet your friend at the supermarket, you would get in trouble. You're talking with your husband outside, walking, you'd get in trouble. The lockdown was horrible. So they were very much about COVID was horrible. I want that to be over. It was a nightmare. That they know that you share germs, but they love mate. And so those 8 of us, we drank mate, and like, yeah, we could get sick, but we're going to live life, and this is a great shared custom, and we don't want it to disappear.
That's kind of my sense in Paraguay. I don't know Victor and Enrique, but I lived in Paraguay during COVID, and there was like a hot minute where I think Paraguayans were like, maybe we shouldn't share. I think it lasted a couple months, and then everyone was like, forget that. We love this too much. I mean, I don't know if that's kind of your experience as well.
We have early in the morning, we drink mate, and around the 9:30, we start drinking tereré. But before that, we have another part of the religion or traditional. It's like empanadas. It's like famous another food that we have there, and I believe it's same in Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. That we have empanada, and this is we call tereré rupa. So we're preparing our stomach for receiving the tea, or tereré in this case. So this is another product that we go tereré, and specifically in Paraguay, tereré and empanada, they coming together. Rupa, I mean, is bed. So you prepare the bed in your stomach for receiving that. And you can eat everything, but it's more specific. And like you say, Yerba is you found in the corner. Empanada shop is same. We can say shop. It's not like a McDonald's, but like it's like a kiosco. You can find in the corner, or somebody's like on the difficult problem with the money maybe. So some women, more women, is like make empanadas, and they sell it from home, and that is, you don't need to go in the store or something. That was your neighbor, or sometimes you wake up and hey, I would like to make empanadas, and that is your business now. And I believe in Argentina they use correct me. I think it's like they drink mate, and the same time they eat tortilla, something like no, torta frita. Here we go. Yeah, that's another thing that we combine all the time. Yeah. Thanks.
I wanted to finish. A thought is that I was wondering when you were introducing the elix vomit something, like the vomiting elix, I'm wondering if they drank it on an empty stomach, because they didn't do the tereré rupa. they didn't prepare their stomach, because if you drink it on an empty stomach, you know, you might vomit. I wondered, Victor or Enrique, do either of you want to explain the history of tereré and why really only in Paraguay mate, the plant yerba mate, is drank with cold water? Because it's actually a very specific explanation in Paraguayan history about it. How do you feel? I mean, it's Chaco War.
Two big war in Paraguay. The first one started in 1865 and ended in 1870. They call the Triple Alianza, the three countries coming on top of Paraguay. So after that, Paraguay started to almost like 300,000 people only in the country survived. So they start to the new country. So 1932 to 1935, we have the other war. They call the Guerra del Chaco, the Chaco's War against Bolivia. So the people want to drink the mate because mate is very, very important. It's very, very part of us. And they couldn't because the fire will show where they are. So the way to do is, okay, let's to drink with the cold water. And this is how is born the tereré. Why we call tereré? Because the noise. As soon as you finish, and will make. There you go.
And I just want to do one tie with the Chaco War with U.S. history, because what happened, the whole reason the Chaco War happened is because Rockefeller believed there was petroleum in the Chaco. And Paraguay would not let Rockefeller drill in the Chaco. So what he did is he approached Bolivia and he said, if I fund your army, will you invade Paraguay, take over the Chaco, and then give me drilling rights? And Bolivia said, sure, that sounds cool. Let's do that. And so they invaded Paraguay, and Paraguay fought with very few resources, but President Hayes of the United States did support Paraguay. And that is the reason why that state, which is now the Paraguayan Chaco, the state is called Presidente Hayes. And it's because President Hayes came in and supported Paraguay, who was fighting with very few resources, and that was one of the reasons why they couldn't afford for the Bolivian soldiers to see the smoke of them preparing their hot water for mate. And it's hot in Paraguay. So I think once the soldiers discovered, hey, this isn't bad with unheated water, then it was like, well, wait a minute, let's add ice. And then it became tereré. Any other comments, questions, sharing stories? Yeah.
Hi. This is going back to the hygiene of drinking yerba mate. We are planning on visiting Paraguay later this year, actually. So you were talking about the roadside mate stands.
Yeah.
How safe is it to drink that water?
So when we were, I was shocked when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. Now I think they're getting tap water, and actually, like the tap water and well water in Paraguay when we were there was fine.
Okay.
So I'm fine with drinking it, and we drank lots of well water, and I never had any problems. You know, if you're going for a really short period of time, maybe you'd be a little bit more conscientious. I don't know. What would be your advice?
I think if you're in a very, very rural community and you're drinking well water, then you, coming from like a U.S. floral in your gut, may not want to. But generally, so Paraguay has done really well in terms of water and sanitation, and 98% of communities have piped water at this point in Paraguay. In fact, Peace Corps a long time ago graduated the WASH program. It was a program where volunteers back in our day were very active, but Paraguay's done so well. I mean, it's only 2% of communities in Paraguay do not have piped water.
follow the lead of your son.
I think I'll get my own gourd though.
Yeah, two quick questions. One about the gourd, like
Yeah.
why the gourd and what is it made out of and what does it symbolize?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, what is the Guarani connection to mate?
Yeah.
And is it something that like they truly embrace, or is this more like a European Spanish thing?
So, so the gourd. What was really cool in doing this research was I got a grant to go, and it was more. I wanted to get out of the Phoenix heat for the summer. It's horrible. So there's this library at Brown University called the John Carter Brown Library, and they have a lot of money, and they give short-term, or they give fellowships to go look at early modern documents. And they actually have the largest collection of Guarani printed colonial early modern documents. So they have transcribed, or no, this is printed 1639 and 1640 Guarani Spanish Guarani dictionaries. These were made by Jesuits to help with the teaching Guarani to the missionaries and further their missionary endeavors, right? But it gives a lot of, it has a lot of information. They have a lot of, the translations, but also kind of contextual things. So like they'll have, they have like, it's great. The Yerba made me crazy. So I don't know, like what, how am I to take that? I guess he drank or she drank so much Yerba that they are like super hyper with caffeine. I'm not quite sure, but they have like phrases in it. And it's really neat because you can search these dictionaries. I don't know how they read this print from 1639, 1640, but you could search them. And so I was able to search them. And so typically everybody has thought that the gourds, like they call them in Argentina porongas, are what was traditionally used by indigenous peoples. Yes, but also the same word in Guarani was for ceramics, a ceramic vessel, and that was used for cauim, which is an alcoholic beverage, and they found that in anthropological sites. So the traditional thing is either the gourd, which makes total sense. It's a cheap way of getting a drinking vessel, but they also had ceramics. And now we have, you can see in the back, some of in Paraguay, they have these great carved cow horn things to drink with. Not so much in Argentina. So those are typical. And like I said, in Argentina, what's interesting is that if you talk to the common person on the street, they will connect mate to the gaucho and the cowboy, and there's a long history of the gaucho being mixed indigenous, all sorts of a racial mixture, and there's the pampas, and there's agriculture, and and his diet was beef, mate, and alcohol, and so there's that connection, but they don't associate it, interestingly, with the Guarani. Now, so it's in the dictionary, in this Guarani Spanish dictionary, as ka'a, and those of us who speak Guarani, and even in the colonial times, you see ka'a as the translation, but they had a second word, it's congonha in Portuguese. Congoi is another translation, which we never hear. I mean, in Guarani, it's not even a Guarani. I've talked to some linguists. It's not even Guarani. It's actually J from a different, not Guarani indigenous peoples, but the J language. So the J speakers were in the same Yerba areas. So it's not clear, is it Guarani or is it the J people who first originated it? But by the time the Europeans came, both groups were drinking yerba mate. The Jesuits, when they first see it, the early explorers, they don't write anything about yerba. Everything is new, and they're starving. Like they're out in the middle of nowhere. They're looking for gold. They're hungry. Native peoples are trying to kill them. They could care less about a drink. So they're not writing about it. It's the Jesuits who write about it because they want to convert the native peoples, and they're looking for anything that could be associated with the devil. And they're not used to any coffee or tea. Coffee and tea haven't spread in Europe yet, so they've never had caffeine. And these are associated with religious activities. And so the shaman are drinking mate, and there's the Jesuits write about that, and that they sometimes use them with oracles for health reasons or for divining stuff. So the Jesuits at first, they're like, this is the drink of the devil. They're trying to get rid of it. They actually take it to the Inquisition to try to get it outlawed. But you have the Spanish conquistadors are coming. They don't bring many Spanish women because it's in the middle of nowhere. They intermarry with Guarani women. They adopt Guarani language. Their offspring adopt Guarani language. They adopt practices. And, you start drinking this. It's pretty cool. You like it. And you can't root it out. So the Jesuits cannot root it out, and it's there. And in Paraguay, it's part of the culture so much, and Guarani is the language, and everybody knows that the Guarani comes from the Guarani people. So it's there, I think, it's known that it's Guarani, but in Argentina, and in Uruguay also, it's more this gaucho.
I think we need to wrap and move on. But I did. Oh, yeah. Is there another question?
No, he's going to do music, right?
Yeah. Enrique's going to move it. I do have one question to leave with on this about. I think the word mate, and correct me if I'm wrong, is actually a Quechua word. Interestingly enough, because Craig, I know you served in Peru, so here we go. It all ties together, right? So I think it's the Quechua word for gourd. So, and I don't know, and maybe this is your epilogue to your book later, of like, what was the connection? Because because obviously it was originally drank in gourds, but why the Quechua, there's some reason.
So at first, it was not called yerba mate. It was called Yerba del Paraguay. And even into the early 20th century, they would market yerba brands in Argentina, and it would be yerba from Paraguay. But yerba mate only comes into play and be the prominent word when Argentina plants yerba mate. When they start cultivating and they start selling, you don't want to call it yerba del Paraguay. Like, you want it to be Argentine. You want them to buy Argentine yerba, so it becomes yerba mate. But before that, in the 19th century, even in the 18th century, you do talk about drinking mate. So it wasn't yerba mate, but you would drink mate. And it is the Quechua term. It's not, and so there's, in my introduction, I talk about it's like this conquest where it becomes yerba mate, and yerba is herb, but it's not an herb, it's a tree. It shows how the Spaniards didn't know what they were talking about. But then it also, in the colonial period, when you said yerba, everybody knew what you're talking about. And even today in Argentina or Paraguay, you talk about yerba, you know what yerba is. It's kind of like how we talk about weed. When I say you want some weed, you know what weed I'm talking about. It's the same thing with yerba. But then also the mate is a kind of conquest, but because it's putting an indigenous term, but it's not a Guarani term. And then associating it with Yerba del Paraguay, associating it with the place, but not the people. And then the disappearance of Congoy, and Congoy in Argentina is in Portuguese is Congonha, and the regional airport in Sao Paulo is Congonhas. There's a town in Minas Gerais that has a UNESCO national patrimony, is Congonhas. When I talk to my Brazilian friends, they're like, yeah, Congonha, that's this place. They don't know that that's actually a J word for yerba mate. And Argentina, when they're planting yerba mate, there's all these newspaper articles about this falsified yerba mate coming from Brazil, because they want to, displace the Brazilian yerba, and they call it, they say, we get all this congonilla. Congonilla is congoy, which is an indigenous term for yerba mate, and they're calling it falsified. So there's all these interesting things with words and how they're chosen and stuff. So, but I could, okay, yeah.
Quick question. We were just in Paraguay and we went across the border over to Argentina,
Yeah.
to the Estancia, and they had a yerba mate plant,
Yeah, yeah.
but they shut it down. There was some kind of price control or something over the years, and
Yeah.
I didn't fully understand
Yeah.
that, but I guess it's gone away.
There's a lot of problems in the industry. In Argentina, they for a long time had a national board that would control the plantings and control the price. And because it takes like 7 or 8 years until you can harvest the tree, and so the prices go up, everybody plants, then you have overproduction, the prices plummet, and so they had government intervention for a long, long time. And that ended in 1980s, 1990s, and then there was protests, and they reinstated the institute. They called it the Instituto Nacional de la Yerba Mate. That until Milei, they would set the price. So if you were a yerba grower, you could sell your yerba they would set the price minimum. This is unprocessed yerba. So there's been a lot of government intervention, formally or informally. One of the big yerba companies told me, Las Marias, is that under the previous president with Macri and Kirchner, they didn't formally have price controls, but they would go to the big companies who were most popular, and they would pressure them and like, we're going to audit you and we're going to do all this unless you keep your price low. And since they were the major brands, if their price is low, everybody else has to put their prices low. So there's a lot of the money is made by the big processing companies, not the farmers. So there's a lot of tensions there. It's very complicated. And I would talk to anybody, if you have any questions afterwards, I am willing to, or my email, you can look me up at Arizona State, and I will respond by email or have any sort of conversation. But we do have some music.
Yay, thank you, Julia. This was amazing.
Thank you.
We have 2 quick announcements, and then we're going to keep it really quick because we want to turn over to the music portion with Enrique. The 2 quick announcements are that today, Julia has donated a few of her books. There's actually only 3 left, and she's willing to autograph them for you. So if you donate $100 to the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience, you get a free autographed copy of Julia's book. There's postcards with the QR code. You can also ask me, and there's also a QR code over there. So if you just choose to do that, let me know, and then you will get your signed copy of the book. You can also do the same arrangement with another book, was donated by a man named John Fleming, he's a RPCV here in Ohio, who served in Malawi in the 60s, and it's his account, being an African-American, US American, going to Africa, serving in Malawi, and they, for whatever reason, Peace Corps assigned him to an all-white farming community, so it's a very, very interesting perspective. And then the last book, which is not part of, it's for sale here, but it's one of the events that we did, that the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience did with International Peace Museum 2 weeks ago today. And Mike Roman, who I'm about to introduce, really put this event together, is written by an asylum seeker from Kiribati. Did I say it right? Okay. From Kiribati, where Mike served as a Peace Corps volunteer. And her book is on sale here at the International Peace Museum. There's only, I think, 5 left for $25. So for a $100 donation to the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience, you can get a signed copy of either John's book or Julia's book, or you can purchase this book. And then I do want to introduce Mike, because he has a really interesting announcement related to Paraguay. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the great presentation, the great camaraderie, and the tereré. I've had 4 gourds on an empty stomach. So my name is Mike. I am from the National Peace Corps Association. I'm serving the last few months of my board membership on that organization. And so this announcement comes straight from the National Peace Corps Association. In fact, you guys are the first to hear this very exciting announcement. And as it's an official announcement, I've cut it in half. I am going to read directly from what we got from the organization. Every year we gather. Well, we haven't gathered for the last 5 years, but every year we try to gather in person. This year we are going to be gathering at American University in Washington, D.C. for the annual Peace Corps Connect conference. And this is one of those announcements that we will be making. For tens of thousands of members of the Peace Corps community, Harris Warford will always be remembered and revered for his iconic work as one of the architects of the Peace Corps, his vigorous lifelong commitment to volunteerism and service above self. His legacy lives on through MPCA's Harris Warford Award for Global Leadership. The Global Citizen Award recognizes an outstanding global leader from a country where Peace Corps volunteers serve, whose life was influenced by the Peace Corps, and whose career contributed significantly to their nation and the world in ways that reflect shared values in human dignity and economic, social, and political development. This highly competitive award is the highest honor bestowed upon a global leader by MPCA. We had a lot of submissions this year, a lot. Therefore, MPCA is proud to announce that the 2025 Warford winner is Lucy Aquino of Paraguay. As a renowned environmentalist and the founder of World Wildlife Foundation in Paraguay, Ms. Aquino has achieved an incredible result in her effort against deforestation, including the Zero Deforestation Law. In addition to the Warford Award, her work has earned multiple other international awards, including recognition from the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It can go on, but for sake of time, and I really want to hear the music, I'm going to turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. So really quickly, if you're interested in attending Peace Corps Connect in July in DC at American University, please chat with Mike, but it's also peacecorpsconnect.org, correct? Okay. I really just have to say one quick thing about Lucy Aquino and her Peace Corps story really quickly is that if you guys can YouTube this, but the very first biological inventory of the Paraguayan Chaco, which we were just talking about with the Chaco War, was done in the 70s when Lucy Aquino was a grad student with a Peace Corps volunteer named Lee Fitzgerald. It's the first time people started actually documenting flora and fauna in the Paraguayan Chaco, and there's a Mutual of Omaha episode for those of us who are old enough to remember that. There's a Mutual, you can YouTube it and watch the Mutual of Omaha episode when Lucy Aquino was a young grad student conducting the first biological inventory of the Paraguayan Chaco with Lee Fitzgerald when he was a Peace Corps volunteer. Lucy's been a huge partner of us. The other thing that I think is really important is that she there's a documentary movie made by two Peace Corps volunteers, Jeff Wong and Henry Mallet. They did a movie called Rostros del Rio, where they documented, they rode the Paraguay River for 5 months, 1,000 kilometers, and they stopped at different communities, and they basically documented their experience of just rowing the entire Paraguay River. It's amazing. And so WWF, Lucy Aquino's the one who funded that for Henry and Jeff to create that movie and do that trip. Okay, without further ado, nuestro gran amigo Enrique.
Mike, you say you wanna listen to the music. I'm so sorry for you, but I will try.
ciega y con mil canciones, como leñita seca, recuerdos de fogones que invitan a matear. Extraño, a orillas del camino, en donde los jazmines extendieron un altar, al pie del caricán, la luna cuando pasa, serenata la cresta del caucal, al pie del calicán, toda luna cuando pasa, serenata la cresta del caucal. Tu amor es una estrella, cuerdas de guitarra y una luz que me alumbra en mi oscuridad. Acércate a la reja, sos la dueña de mi alma, sos mi luna cautiva que me deja disfrutar. Acércate a la reja, sos la dueña de mi alma, sos mi luna cautiva que me deja disfrutar. The last one. So, we talk about Ubuntu. What I'm going to say about Ubuntu that means us together. And we see many very things to create everything. But that's really nothing if we are not united, if we are not our relations must be in the same. And one of the authors in Paraguay, his name was Vladimir Putin. He wrote this poem. Beautiful. Unfortunately, because in the last war with Paraguay, in case you can do this one, our war will be mine. And this is what we're looking for. Exactly. To be one. To fight together against unhappiness. Fight together about after things happening. So this is what we see. We can do it. And say like that, that would be the chorus. Pero es mucho más linda reina paz, abrazados como hermanos, es más bello el Paraguay. Todos juntos. Pero es mucho más linda en el rancho reina paz, abrazados como hermanos, es más bello el Paraguay. One more time, let's try to do together. Pero es, let's say together. Pero es mucho más linda si en el rancho reina paz. Abrazados como hermanos, es más bello el Paraguay. But it's much better, much more beautiful if in our house bring that peace and we act like a brother. And that will make our world much more beautiful. Can we say again? Yeah. Pero es mucho más lindo en el rancho reina paz, abrazados como hermanos, es más bello el Paraguay. Vamos a decir, mucho más lindo en el rancho reina paz, abrazados como hermanos, es más bello el Paraguay. The first one I es linda nuestra tierra cuando el sol surgiendo va y anuncia la mañana en el canto del zorzal. Es linda nuestra tierra cuando el sol bajando va y un lucero en el cielo nos invita a soñar. Todo. Pero es mucho más linda en el rancho de la paz, abrazados como hermanos, es más bella Paraguay. Vamos a mucho más linda en el rancho de la paz, abrazados
Thank you, everyone. I hope that you feel more connected, and Julia's around to ask more questions. And thank you, Alice. Thank you, the museum, and much love. Announcement. Oh, and we have free Guayaki. Yes. Let's do it. Anyone who served in Paraguay, come on up.